Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hi, good evening everybody, and welcome to Augmenting Reality Meetup, September 19. It's been a bit of a break for the summer. I feel nice and relaxed. I hope you had a good summer as well, which is cool. And we've got some really good speakers for you this evening. Now, for anybody who doesn't know me already, my name is Steve Dan. I'm the co-founder and executive chairman of an AR and VR company, an immersive technology company called Medical Realities, and also the co-founder and CEO of Amplified Robot, who are sponsoring this event this evening, hence the banners on either side. And I'm also the organizer of this meetup. Thank you all for coming tonight. So it's that little commercial. Right, so this evening, running order is going to be me talking about really what's happened over the last 3 months that we weren't here, and what's going to be happening in the next week or so, or the next few weeks. Charles DuPont, who's the head of product mobile stages at Dimension, basically that's capturing stuff for virtual reality and gaming and stuff like that in 3D live. And we've got Chris and Rob, who are the co-founders of Reality 01, and you'll actually see, they're actually demonstrating it outside, so once you've seen them talk about it, you can actually sort of try it out for yourself. It's a way of capturing things for use in VR and gaming and websites and things like that in 3 dimensions. It's a really cool thing. And last but not least, we've got Rachel Beach, and she's the product manager of, and we had a long talk about how we should call this, but it's called ACE IT from the London South Bank University. Basically, it's a new accelerator program which is happening at London South Bank. It's really exciting. They've got some really cool ideas down there. So I think that could be quite interesting, especially if you're starting up your company or you want some help in that area. And then after that, we've got a little bit of networking time, chat, meet, socialize, talk about AR, VR, XR, AI, haptics, whatever. That's what we're here to talk about. So, a couple of things that happened while we were away is that a company shut down. A company called Daiquiri, who made augmented reality headsets, well, hard hats, and also glasses. You can see the glasses here. They were actually quite good. They burnt through $238 million since 2010 to get here. And in actual fact, they started up the technology. It was really designed for the workspace primarily, whether that was actually out on site or whether it was actually in a factory. And the reason it didn't work, according to the CEO, was that they found it difficult to train people up using AR devices. I don't know. As I say, it's a lot of money to go through, and it's very sad that a lot of people are being let go. But that's the way with new technology. There's going to be casualties along the road, and some quite expensive casualties as well. One of the good news things is that we've actually got from Vive really cool stuff coming out. And this is a little bit of a teaser about the Vive Index.
Why you worry about the small things, bruh? Don't trip on a little bitty stuff. These commas gon' hold us up. Keep getting ins like it's regular. like it's formula, like it's formula. Stars shining us no matter what. Rain fall down, still going up. Could be turbulence, so girl, you cup. Get up on this amazing thing. I can hear them church bells ring. Yeah, my God, for the choir sings. Hey, glorious. He's so good when it's me and you. I'ma know everything you do. Look up now, see the light shine through. It's glorious. Just put your now, here goes my hand. Jump on this train to the promised land. Don't look ahead, I got your back. I'll be there. Believe we gon' get right. Believe we gon' get right. Believe we're right on time. 1, 2, 3. It's so glorious. It's so marvelous. It's
So any resemblance to the Oculus Quest is purely coincidental. But of course, basically, and interesting enough, right now on stage in Pasadena, I think, they're talking about Oculus Quest. In fact, Mr. Facebook himself, Mark Zuckerberg, is talking about it. So it's going to be interesting to see what the next thing is that they're doing. I think it's all about hand tracking, and not only hand tracking, but finger tracking. But we'll know by the end of tonight. And they've got a 2-day conference just about the Oculus, and mainly the Oculus Quest. Great thing about the Vive, obviously, is it doesn't need any, once you set it up once, that's it. And thank God they've got the controllers right. So they haven't got huge, great controllers and things like that. So that's working really well. So that with Vive, and also what Valve are doing as well, really interesting stuff in the big space of sort of VR. A lot of it's aimed at gaming, and we'll circle back round to gaming right at the very end. Something that's just popped up in the last couple of days. Apple has just filed 2 or 3 patents which are about augmented reality displays. So they keep teasing this. They're getting closer and closer to AR glasses. The sort of at one point they were saying they were going to sort of perhaps have them out in 2020. I think that might be a little bit early. What's interesting about the patents is that the field of view is 5 or 6 times larger than the new HoloLens 2. So it's gigantic. Retina display, so it could be really, really exciting. So I think this is actually sort of teasing what they're going to be doing over the next couple of years. So expect to see something by the end of 2020 at the very latest. And interesting enough, Huawei and Cambridge University are doing something very similar. So it's all about retinal displays, and it's about it's about how you keep things in focus. It's about how you have something in front of your eyes, but also having that in focus when you look at it, and having everything else out of focus, but also looking behind it and having that go out of focus, which actually really helps. It stops eye strain and things like that. So they've done some fantastic work on here. And I think they're sort of talking to a number of glasses and manufacturers about incorporating that. And again, we're going to be talking about that again very, very shortly. So, object floating. So, this is the HoloLens 2. They were supposed to announce that it was going to be available for sale now. In fact, they were actually going to announce it tonight, but now they're not. So, it's very close, but when they actually do get it, you'll be able to get this.
The HoloLens 2 is finally coming. Well, we've known it was coming since Microsoft announced it back in February, but now we have a date, sort of. At this week's World Artificial Intelligence Conference in Shanghai, Microsoft EVP Harry Shum revealed we should expect to see the next generation mixed reality headset sometime in September. The new model should be an improvement on its predecessor in every way, based on what we saw at Mobile World Congress. And one would certainly hope so, given that the first HoloLens came out over 3 years ago, back in early 2016. Version 2 should be more comfortable and require minimal fitting thanks in part to cameras on its bridge that measure your pupil distance and adjust the image accordingly. Those will also help with eye tracking and let you scroll simply by looking around. They'll even enable the very sci-fi touch of logging in with a retina scan. The HoloLens 2 has also been rebalanced, taking the pressure off your nose and moving it to the top of your head. It's better at keeping your head cool, and there's a flip-up visor, so you can easily reconnect with the real world. On the inside, the HoloLens 2 is apparently packing a Snapdragon 850 instead of an Intel chip. There's a time-of-flight depth sensor to help with gesture control, and oh yeah, it's got twice the field of view of the original, going from a 720p TV set to 2K for each eye. If you're thinking all of this tech doesn't sound cheap, it's not. We're looking at a $3,500 price tag. That's not a huge deal though. HoloLens isn't meant for the average consumer, and it's aimed squarely at enterprise users and institutions like schools and hospitals. It's a lot easier and cheaper to train an engineer virtually rather than flying them out to see the real thing, after all. If you're big on all kinds of headsets, from mixed to augmented to virtual reality, be sure to like and subscribe to Engadget, and we'll see you in September with the latest news from IFA.
So hopefully it will be out soon. And it actually is a big leap forward. It's actually a very nice headset. Lenovo are doing a lot of stuff in VR and AR. This is what they're doing in AR. And yes, it uses a phone that you put into a visor. I think I'm not sure where they're going with this, but they're persevering with it because they started it off actually having sort of games that you could play, especially with Marvel characters. And now they've just released a whole new set of other games that you can play with more Marvel characters.
Back when Lenovo introduced the Mirage AR headset in 2017, I think we were all a little bit confused. It was an AR headset display that had only one game on it, which was the Star Wars Jedi game back then, and it didn't really seem like people were using AR for gaming. But today, 2 years down the road, it seems like Lenovo's plans for this headset are getting just a little bit clearer. It's announcing a new kit update to the original, and this new box is called the Lenovo Mirage AR with Marvel Dimension of Heroes, and it's basically the same hardware with just a new game, but it's intriguing enough that I had to check it out here at our hands-on. The main hardware difference you'll find is that now the kit comes with 2 controllers instead of one sort of lightsaber-looking joystick controller when it launched 2 years ago. Now, in terms of the software, this means that you can have players with multiple types of gestures and they can do a lot more. So you can play as characters such as Thor, Star-Lord, Captain America, Captain Marvel, or even Doctor Strange, who is the main protagonist in this game. I'm not gonna spoil it for you, but you're basically supposed to make it through 6 storylines and fight Dormammu at the end of it. So if you know who that is, or if you're at all a Marvel fan, this might be a very compelling reason for you to buy this kit. If you're already familiar with the Lenovo Mirage AR, you know what's happening here. It's not a VR experience. It's layered on top of the world around you. You have to calibrate it at first to set up your boundaries. There's a beacon on the floor to tell the headset's cameras where it's looking at. And you set up the thing by downloading it up onto your phone and then launching it and then slipping your phone itself into the visor. Now, with the 2 controllers, I could protect myself with a shield on one hand by pressing the lower button and then fire shots off on my other hand by pressing the higher up button. And I was playing as Star-Lord, taking down some alien-looking creatures with the guidance of Doctor Strange by my side. It was fun. It's not the most immersive experience because, once again, it is AR, but the picture quality was really good. I really enjoyed myself. So if you're one of the people who's already bought the original Lenovo Mirage AR with the Star Wars game, don't fret. This is going to be backward compatible. You're only going to have to spring for the new controllers, which Lenovo isn't sharing the cost of yet, but they target it to be around $99. As for those of you who don't have that and want to buy the Marvel kit and still also play the Star Wars game, you can just get the new kit for $240 and it'll be backward compatible. Now with each of these controllers, you're supposed to use a AA battery to power it, and it will last for up to 8 hours of continuous gameplay, which doesn't sound like a long time. And if you're the type of person that gets caught up in, say, your dorm room playing for 8 hours on end, then that's going to be short. But for most other casual players, that should be enough. As for the headset itself, once again, that depends on your handset that you're using with the goggles. Lenovo doesn't have any plans yet to open up the platform for this headset, but this is an interesting indicator that all of the things that Disney basically owns and licenses as characters could be potentially turned into another game in the future. So this is a vast library of very compelling characters and franchises here. And it gives the Mirage AR just a little bit more of a potential for success as a gaming AR headset in the future. Lenovo also had other stuff to show off here at IFA, including a refreshed slew of laptops, as well as some...
Okay, that's enough of that. So basically, the only USP they've got, which is quite big, is Marvel and Disney. So let's hope they can do something with it. Did anybody buy the original headset? No, and even I didn't buy it, so that probably says something. They're going to struggle, I think, with this. Right. Some of the most exciting things happening at the moment are actually about capturing people and live in 3D with your phone, and then creating hollow images. This is a little piece about that was on the BBC about a company called Hollow Me.
Hey, now think holograms. What comes to mind? You think pop stars brought back to life on stage with... But what about the broader potential for business? Well, the online retailer ASOS has already launched an app enabling a hologram model to prance about your living room as you shop for jeans. Could holograms mean the end of going in to see your bank or your banker, or even going to a doctor's surgery? Let's find out. Janos Armstrutz is the CEO of Hollow Me, and Hollow Me, you create holograms, right? You created a hologram of me, apparently. Good to have you on the program. So how does it work? Why holograms?
Thanks for hosting me. First.
That's okay, yeah.
So communication over the past couple of decades hasn't improved that drastically from photos and videos. We offer the next evolution in communication, putting the human being into the world around you,
right,
by bringing the communicator into your own space digitally.
So we could... Okay, so I'm going to let you in a TV secret. So you came in yesterday and filmed me with your hologram camera thingy, whatever, and now all of a sudden I'm popping up, there I am. So, but what is the purpose of that? So what, I could just... I could go off to the doctor's office, or I could go to say hello to family in Australia, is that...
You could, yeah.
Yeah.
So what we do is we create a communications channel which is agnostic to any industry. It allows any communicator to use our technology to put humans anywhere in the world that they like.
But is that in real time?
That's in real time, yes.
So, yeah, right, okay, because I know that was pre-recorded, what I just did then. So hang on, so you could, I mean, you've been approached by the UN, right? I mean, you could do training courses, I guess, and help developing nations and things like that, you know, in Africa and Asia?
Yeah, so what's really interesting about our technology is it has a lot of intrinsic value where it's difficult to put a human being, or it's very costly to put a real human being.
Yeah.
So we actually transport the human, the communicator, either to a different place in the world or to us as a communications tool.
And so the purpose of, I mentioned ASOS, the retailer. So could I see if I want to buy a new suit, or my wife wants to buy a new dress, does it go on her, if it's her hologram, or we use another different model, if you will, and we can look at it up close or something? Is that?
So with our technology, we're very specific about capturing the world as it is, rather than changing the world.
Right.
So we don't superimpose clothing or anything on anybody else.
Right.
We capture the world as it is.
So we're actually looking at that ASOS, yeah, that site now. And where else is, I mean, the potential, I can only, you know, I'm a bit of a Luddite, so I'm still getting my head around this, but the potential must be amazing. The technology continues to advance in this arena?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, augmented reality has been in its infancy for some time. However, now we do have the powerful capability as a consumer and as a communicator to experience augmented reality in high detail. The smartphone is so powerful now that you can experience high definition communications methods like ours instantly. Right. Through phones.
So I could literally, you could literally go to your doctor's office
You
as
could,
a hologram.
You could, or the doctor could come to you.
Or the doctor, even better. I'm thinking, so the doctor come, yeah. And I'm thinking of all sorts of, you mentioned Air New Zealand, right? Is in talks about possibly using customer service if there's a disruption?
Yeah, exactly. So
in 20 seconds.
When there's a disruption, you want that person or the person, the communicator, to be in your own space, to be talking to you. It's more emotive, it's more immersive, and that's really powerful without
So
tech.
they just pop them. Look, that's amazing. And he's a fellow Aussie as well. You're going to become a billionaire Aussie, aren't you? Remember, I helped you some exposure there. 10%, that's all I asked for.
Right, I think Aaron Hazelhurst is probably the most annoying presenter on television. Behind all that was some quite interesting stuff about what they're using it for ASOS and things like that. And there's also a guy called Albert Kim, who actually has a company called Double Me, who's doing a lot of good stuff in this space as well. So, glasses.
Hello and welcome to the 2019 edition of Will Smart Glasses Actually Be a Thing? Today we are looking at the Focals by North, which is a Canadian company that, like the rest of us, didn't want to live in a future where Google Glass might be a real thing. The folks at North prioritized making a great pair of glasses over making a cool gadget. Now, that's not to say that it's not a cool gadget, but these things really do look and feel like a pair of regular old glasses, except for the fact that they're a little bit heavier on the front side than a pair of Warbies, let's say. The average onlooker probably wouldn't even know that you're wearing smart glasses at all. However, folks wearing them will notice that they aren't so regular. Focals act a bit like an Apple Watch on your face, relaying notifications and messages from your phone. On the right lens, just above your sight line, you'll see incoming notifications from Messages, Calendar, Reminders, Email, Slack, and Uber. And Focals also offer a variety of other content to be consumed discreetly, like sports scores and language lessons, as well as the time and date. To navigate the UI, the user wears a ring with a little joystick attached to scroll through the various functions of the device. One of those functions is to respond to text. You can do that by choosing from a list of smartly generated responses to the text you've been sent, or you can use the built-in Alexa integration and speak your responses. One caveat to this is that since iMessage is a closed platform, Focals has to generate a dummy number to send responses to text messages. So how does one go about actually getting a pair? Well, it starts with a sizing consultation at one of North's stores. They have one in Cobble Hill, Brooklyn, where we went. There's also one in Toronto. And there, North has a booth outfitted with 11 cameras. Now, those cameras generate a 3D model of your head, ensuring you end up with the one of 100 sizes that North offers that might fit you best. From there, you can choose from 3 color offerings, and then you go through a demo of the product. A few weeks later, after your glasses have been built, you head back to the store for a final fitting and to pick up your pair of smart glasses. Focals start at $600.
So, Google Glass without the cameras and a bit more stylish. So, I mean, they're selling quite a few, so it's quite interesting. And it does actually work outside, which is a big problem with a lot of the augmented reality displays. One of the success stories in virtual reality is a company called The Void. The Void do out-of-home experiences. And I'm glad to announce that in actual fact, in November, we're holding a special out-of-home entertainment edition of augmenting reality with Kevin Williams, with some amazing speakers lined up. So I'll be able to sort of let you know about them in the next couple of weeks. But it's going to be quite a big blockbuster, because one of the places where there is traction in VR, a big lot of traction, is in out-of-home entertainment, whether it's escape rooms or experiences like this.
The Void is an immersive reality that you can step into with your friends and family.
I'm going to hand you your helmet.
I'm a magician by trade, and there's a lot of theory that goes into creating the illusion of the impossible.
Follow me.
Plus what virtual reality really is. I mean, if we're going to put you inside of Star Wars, I mean, that's an impossible reality. That's not a reality that you can actually travel to and visit. So we use a lot of magic theory and design behind the scenes to help convince you, even if it's just subconsciously, that these things are real.
What'd you think?
It was so good.
Ah, the mall. It's a place you come to go shopping, see a movie, maybe grab a bite to eat. But what if the mall were actually a portal to another dimension? It's time to step inside the void. This just sprung up overnight?
Yeah, just overnight, yeah, easy peasy.
Curtis Hickman is a magician, but even he can't make something like this just appear.
This is where you check in. How's it going?
The new virtual reality pop-up took weeks to build under the dome of Westfield's San Francisco Center, a preview of the much bigger space they're building downstairs. The name is an acronym.
The Void stands for Vision of Infinite Dimensions.
And the first dimension you can visit is a galaxy far, far away. Star Wars Secrets of the Empire sends you on a rebel mission.
Cassian Andor himself is going to be giving you that mission.
Okay.
You're not the only one who lost everything.
Diego Luna returns to his role from Rogue One, and so does Alan Tudyk
Looks like you'll have to fight your way out.
as the smart-mouthed K2SO. But the star of the story
First step's putting the vest on.
is you.
You're going to put it on just like a backpack. So one arm goes in this side, one arm goes in that side.
All right.
In 2015, when Hickman co-founded The Void, gear like this didn't exist, so they had to create it.
If you happen to get shot for some reason, you're going to feel it. You're actually going to feel the impact.
But that is only the beginning.
You walk around the environment, if you see a chair, you can sit down on it. If there's fire, it feels hot. If it's raining, you feel the moisture. I mean, it's like you're actually there.
Using all your senses is how The Void crosses the line from plain old VR to straight up magic.
Honestly, it was really how do we take virtual reality and make good on that promise of being another place, not just seeing another place.
For Hickman, it's all about what you don't see once that visor goes down.
Blasting off.
I was a magician for a really long time. I designed things used by some of the top magicians.
Now, his greatest illusion yet is what lies behind those metal doors. No cameras are allowed inside, but The Void provided us this video.
What we call the stage, the environment that you're in, has all these little props and touchables and sensors and things that are tracking where you are, what you're doing.
And the team here will rearrange the stage to match the virtual world in each new adventure. That means when you reach out and touch something, it's actually there.
Like the lever. Like when there was buttons and things, I wasn't expecting they would be able to touch them.
The fact is, people aren't used to VR you can touch, and that's where the theory of magic comes in. The storylines are sprinkled with little moments magicians call convincers.
When you begin Secrets of the Empire, the first thing we ask you to do is to sit down on this chair. Now, all you're seeing is a digital representation of a chair that may or may not exist, but we're asking you to trust us and put your weight on it. And so as soon as you do, that digital object has a sense of permanence. It becomes real. And then the other things around you that you can't touch, those become more and more real as well.
Once the objects become real, so do the feelings, like fear.
Get on that skiff. Do your best to act imperial.
I feel I should be able to jump down, it should be okay. Nothing should happen, but you can't bring yourself to do it.
Feeling heat from the lava, even smelling the rocket fuel. A funny thing happens when you're fully immersed. You lose track of time.
What'd you think?
Great.
Really good.
No one knows exactly how long they were in there. They just know it wasn't long enough.
We want it longer, we want it longer. So we make the experiences longer, and then they come out like, wow, that was great, I want it longer.
So, yeah, they're doing really well. They're obviously going to tie up with Westfields around the world, so they're going to do more and more things like that. Another company called Zero Latency is doing things very, very similar to that. And I think it's actually taking off in a big way. If you get a chance to try it out, please do, because it's fantastic. Now, anybody that has been with me in this journey right from the very beginning knows that one of my visions is to have the HoloLens from Star Trek make a reality. Qualcomm have just created a cave which is taking us one step closer to that vision.
Well, it looks like I'm enjoying a vacation in the middle of ancient Greece right now. I'm actually not. I'm in the middle of 70 high-resolution screens in a virtual reality cave at the Qualcomm Institute on the UC San Diego campus. And even cooler, I got to speak to the software developer behind it all. Within this 360-degree structure, a bright digital art piece is bouncing countless color pixels towards me. It's powered by 35 computers.
Here we are in the Sun Cave. The Sun Cave is a virtual reality environment that can display 500 million pixels, and it's with that the highest resolution virtual reality environment on the planet.
Jürgen Schultz, the computer scientist who developed the software for this project, says he's pretty sure it is the highest resolution cave in the world because no one has contradicted Qualcomm researchers yet. Schultz says researchers or even companies that want to rent out this cave filled with 4K resolution screens can use it to display data in three-dimensional format. For instance, an excavation site in Israel that was captured with drone technology and can be navigated on the screen through a controller.
The moment you hold it, that's when you start the motion, and then you just slightly move your hand in the direction that you want to fly. And the more you move your hand, the faster you're going to fly.
Schultz also shows off a floating hemoglobin blood cell protein that researchers can view in depth, and a mock-up for a new student center that he says an architectural firm could use to show a client what it might be like to walk up a flight of stairs.
Then you can go up the stairs. You can look at, what do you see when you're up here on the stairs? Is it important that there's something in the background there or not?
The point of this data visualization is that it allows the viewer to see more complex data than in a static 2D format. And it's all produced with 2 computing labs worth of energy and processing power. Though, Schultz says, these types of caves aren't new.
To render just something on the cave walls, that's not that new. The algorithms are the same, they just had to be adapted to this particular geometry. But we then developed new algorithms that allowed us to render more points and more higher resolution data sets in the space because there's just so much more detail that the displays can produce.
The Sun Cave was built about 2 years ago. It follows Qualcomm's Star Cave, which only supported around 60 million pixels, just 10% of what this cave can render. Shalina Chatlani, KPBS News.
Sharper, bigger imagery. Now, if anybody's got some money and actually wants to do take part in a Kickstarter, here's a promo for a Kickstarter project which has just gone live today. From that, it's basically a tabletop augmented reality. But before you rush out and spend money on this, think back 2 or 3 years to a company called Cast AR. Cast AR got $50 million and went bust. The same people behind Cast AR are behind Tilt 5, which is the Kickstarter, which has just gone live today. So it might work, or it might be the definition of insanity because they're doing exactly the same thing again as they did before. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Right, VR is growing bigger and bigger and bigger. More and more games come out every week. This is just to round up a quick selection of the games that are coming live this week. So those are the games coming out this week. Of course, if you really want to make money, find and make the next Beat Saber, and you'll be making about $10 million a week. Okay? So only one person's done it so far, but it's the first of many, I think. So that's my little start at the beginning. I'm going to hand over to Charles now. It's going to take me a couple of seconds just to sort of redo the computer. But if anybody's got any questions, maybe 2 seconds, and I can answer some questions. Yeah. Any questions from my little talk earlier? No? Great. So I'll hand over to Charles DuPont, who's the head of product, Mobile Stage, Dimension Studios. Charles, all yours. Thank you.
Hello. Thanks, Steve. So hi, everyone. As mentioned, my name's Charles. I'm the head of product for these mobile stages, which you're seeing a truck of there for Dimension. I guess, first of all, how many of you guys have seen or heard of the studio near Wimbledon, the Dimension studio? So, a couple of you guys. What's really cool, and the reason I'm on the stage, is that we took that studio mobile. So I don't know if you guys would have seen, but we went off to Northern Ireland. We shot a bunch of pro golfers during the Open, and that was something that Sky broadcast as part of their, showpiece on the Open. Had a really, really great reception, and really this conversation's about a little bit around volumetric content, what makes it interesting, and how we got to the Open and what that means for kind of the future of this kind of video. So I guess to recap, for those of you who haven't seen the studio or aren't quite as familiar, the kind of content we're talking about is here.
With you, I felt so naked and alive. Show me. For once I didn't have to hide myself. Oye, mamacita, ¿qué te pasa? Mira que ya estamos en mi.
So that was Madonna, I think, about 4 or 5 months ago at the Broadcast Billboard Music Awards. And what was really exciting about that was that, we finally got this level of content, this 3D asset, this 3D video, to a level of quality that it's part of a live broadcast, right? So it's all about bringing this immersion that we've been talking about, this way of, consuming, breaking down the fourth wall and being part of the scene yourself into all of these different use cases. And what we've seen with mobile stages is that, broadcast is a really good use case, but everything we've been talking about, everything you mentioned, Steve, and everything we talked about in the last meetup, and I'm sure in the next ones, are all of these cases where you want to be able to connect with these, layers of digital reality that you're augmenting on top of the real world. And fundamentally, this kind of video content, this kind of, very believable, I don't know if I've got a still that's there, this kind of super believable content where you can't really quite tell at any point in time as you're watching the performance whether it's live or not is a really key part of that storytelling. It enables anybody who's trying to tell a story, whether it's a games maker or anyone else, to have those extra options, to get all of the different versions of Madonna. And if you're familiar with what she's trying to do with this new reinvention, she's talking about all the different versions of herself and the identity of Madonna as Madam X. And this is, this performance really allows her to showcase that in a way that I guess audiences hadn't seen before and responded quite well to. So that's what I was describing in terms of the future of content, and we've had a couple of good examples of captures around how do we make this kind of content. We'll have a couple of more talks around capturing again later, and What's really exciting for me, being new to the role, I'm a head of product, so a lot of what I'm thinking about is, how to make stuff people want, is that people really want it. There's so much out there that's, churning and going through all of the, the use cases and how can we use this and how can we tell these different stories and engage people more and more. That it's just a really exciting place to be. So I think actually, because they're a broadcaster, when Sky tried to tell their audience about what they were doing, when they talk about the Sky scope, our setup, their setup over that period of time, they did a really good job at it. So I'll just put this on really quickly and let Nick Doherty, the presenter from Sky, talk through that.
He's going to be the director.
We always like to bring something new to the Open Championship, and this year is no exception. In fact, this innovation is a little bit extra special. It is the Sky Scope. Sounds complicated, but it's anything but. It's really cool, and it will change not only the way you view a player's golf swing, but the way they will, and also the way they'll work on it. Let's go and take a look.
That's where I hit from.
As with any trip to the golf course, the first stop always has to be the pro shop, right? But in this case, it's the Sky Scope Pro Shop. This one's a little bit different though. Still all the clubs, all the different manufacturers, but all the manufacturers are the top players in the world. The 148th Open competitors coming into the Sky Scope. This is what they will have. So you can see the names of some of the players, the exact clubs they use. Dustin Johnson, for instance, this is his driver. This is the one he used when we captured the image of him. You can see the little motion sensors on the club. This was his club. But what's it all about? Let's go and find out. So this is where the magic happens. We've collected our club from the pro shop and now we're into, well, the magic room of Skyscope. This is where we capture the images. You can see green everywhere you look, as well as a whole lot of cameras, 120 to be precise. So what's it all about? Well, it is volumetric capture integrated with motion capture. Sounds quite complicated, but what it effectively means is that we can now see in augmented reality, which means we can bring the virtual world into the real world. Now you've seen that before in the open zone where we do the tee times and the guys walk up alongside us when they're they're on the practice ground or on the golf course already. This will take a massive gallery. Francesco Molinari alongside Tiger Woods. This one's different though, because this now means we can look at their golf swing and not just look at it in a traditional way, which is amazing for us, but also for the players involved. Let me show you what I mean. So they've come in here, they've whooshed away their golf swing, stood on this lovely little line, very simple to do, very easy to do.
Start with the club on the X here, eye line to that white piece of paper, take a beat, step up to the line, do the address. You step up to this line and pick your own mark there, basically. Action! And cut! Back in.
So that was Padre going through the whole process, and in the end of it all, this is left with. So this is my hologram in augmented reality, and it allows me to be able to look at my swing from so many different angles. You can see even by me just even crouching down, I get a very different look at my swing. So I'm looking at it from face on here as well, which is a really cool thing to do, but you say, well, I could do that normally anyway. What you can't do is obviously be able to change the focus, size of what I look at, but most importantly, and the bit I think is really cool about this, really fun for us to look at home, the ability to be able to turn the golfer around, and for me in particular, the release pattern. When would you ever get to see from this angle in the golf swing? So I can see the way that I release the club through the ball. And you know what? I don't like what I'm looking at, but I do like the information that it can give me. Gives us the opportunity to look at the golf swing from a whole new way, which is great for us at home, but also for these players to get to understand their golf swing a little bit better. The technology is amazing, but it's also super cool as well. This is truly a game changer. Yes, let's get rid of that swing. That's where we did all of our filming. That is.
So there you see it. That's our capture stage that we took to Ireland. And I think what's interesting about this isn't so much obviously the output and the fact that it's a different kind of output is really key. But if you're looking for a little bit of behind the scenes, there's a degree of, if I can go to the next slide, what it took to get there, which is a lot, essentially. So a lot of different opportunities or challenges or what we're not allowed to call problems that we just had to go through. And I think more than the torrential rains, it's that aspect of the 120 cameras I want to just touch on really briefly, because it's sure, you know, fundamentally we want to go where the action is, right? We want to go when the action is as well. We want to be there, and we want to capture exactly what's going on so that people get that experience as closely as possible. But in order to do that, we have to be very understanding of what exactly we're trying to do, right? What is the action that we're trying to understand? And so when it comes to golf clubs or golf players, actually golf clubs are really thin and go really quickly, which means for the kind of technology that we're using, it's really hard to do. And this is a genuine opportunity because as you might have seen, the motion capture markers and the extra cameras associated with that, they gave us some incredibly high precision on the position of the golf club. And that was a really fantastic piece of editorial that the Sky broadcasters were able to use when they were talking about this. They said, oh, well, look at the club face in this exact position in time. And they talked about the motion in a way that I think was at a level that you wouldn't quite normally do before. And that was a really interesting thing. There was another, what you might realize, what I certainly didn't, is that a lot of golfers wear hats. And although we thought we could ask them to not wear hats, it turns out they just love wearing hats. And what that means is that when they're leaning over to do their golf swing, we lose a lot of the detail because obviously the cameras are facing you and we're expecting you to stand this a certain way. And so we had to develop some new techniques to just get an extra, this technology, it's worth mentioning, is in partnership with Microsoft, or is using some of the mixed reality software from Microsoft, and we worked with them to develop a way of capturing that gave us all of that face detail as people are leaning over, adding the cameras to specifically get the value of what we want to show the viewer, right? Which is that focus that the golfer has as he's looking down the pole, right? And give the storyteller all of the options that they might want to have as they tell that story. So 120 cameras, but each camera is well thought out, if that's a reasonable way to think about it. It was tough getting there, but boy, are we glad we did. And I think what's really rewarding about that, and what's a credit to the team, isn't so much, well, it isn't just the incredibly hard work that it took, but how everybody thinking about this together worked to create something that was with the audience in mind first and foremost. And I think as we think about the technology, as we're really enthusiastic about all of these different abilities that we have, what I found really, really cool as a takeaway here was saying, well, actually, this ability is really well suited to this version of, sports and of broadcasting, which, when you think about it, isn't the most natural, place to think about when it comes to using a 3D asset. But actually, all of the golf lovers were incredibly enthusiastic about it. And it was amazing for all of us on the team because every single one of us has an example of a time where we talked to one of our friends who, when we mention the Open, they say, oh yeah, that amazing Sky Scope bit, right, where they've got the Star Trek guys. And it's a really cool way to not just, bridge the gap between this cutting edge technology, the best level of quality where you're just innovating to try to get the best capture, but also people who might not necessarily think that technology is what they're looking for in a broadcast, but when they see it, they're like, oh, that's exactly what I wanted. So yeah, it was really nice to see that level of response, both from the grassroots and from the commentators. That's pretty much it in terms of the story I wanted to share with you guys this afternoon, this evening even. Do you guys have any questions before I hand over back to Steve? Yeah, over here.
Oh, hang on a sec. Because we're live, I need you to speak into here. Otherwise, no one will hear you on the worldwide internet.
Cheers. Thank you so much. That was an amazing presentation. As sort of product and thinking about where to go next, talking really hypothetically, what would it take?
I can't comment.
What would it take, kind of, or is it? No, not what would it take to then not have a cave anymore, but actually capture in life with a drone, with something outside? Is that feasible? If you had the ideal situation, like at the moment you're using about 120 cameras.
Yeah.
How could you squeeze that down? Is there something? Would you want that?
So we have a solution that we launched at IBC, the International Broadcasting Conference, which is an answer to that. Because the short answer is there's a lot of different solutions, right? There's the technology that goes from 120 cameras can be brought down to 60, can be brought down to 3, in some ways, you pay some trade-offs and you get there. But what our starting hypothesis is that what people expect to see is this degree of hyperrealism, and then it becomes a question of how do you translate that degree of hyperrealism back. So our solution to broadcasters and our solution to live sports is to use one of our captures as the basis of an avatar. So essentially, you think about getting the real motion animating the real person, but not both at the same time, if that makes sense. So that's definitely where our trajectory is headed, and that's something that we're happy to talk about if that's something that's of particular interest. It's definitely on the cutting edge of research. It's definitely the next, I think the next big the next big one of these talks probably.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also there's lots of other ways that you can do this, but this is working well right now, and it's difficult to tell how long some of the other sort of concepts are going to take before they're actually viable. But it's definitely, it's a sort of, it's going to happen because physics say it can happen and it can be done. Right, who wants to, is there another question? You're closest, so you get the mic first.
Thank you for the presentation. A bit more pragmatic and practical question for the golf players that you couldn't capture the face details. Obviously, there's a blockage going on. I do wonder that do you solve the problem by just adding more cameras and optimizing the older system, or you mentioned Microsoft that you developed a sort of algorithm to predict where the face will be, and then or mix match for these two solutions. What was the solution for that problem?
So the Microsoft mixed reality capture solution, which is the major component of our tech stack that allows for the reconstruction, has a lot of this kind of clever algorithm that you're describing. That was definitely part of the solution. But sometimes the simplest answers are the best ones, and the major part came in from having an extra set of cameras. If I'm being shot all around as a golfer, I actually had some cameras looking from here, looking up at me, and as I lean over, I get all of that detail. I have that detail from somewhere, right? So every camera knows where the volume is. It's just that now there's cameras that actually capture what's going on with the face. Does that answer your question? So it was both, yeah.
So is the software actually generating like a point cloud and a 3D model, or is it just a rendered interpolation of the cameras?
It's generating a 3D model.
Any more questions? Oh, yes.
Hi, so another techie one. How long does it take to go from the capture to actually using? Is there a whole kind of like post-processing phase, or can that be done in real time? Or
so it's not real time, and then it depends on the need. So with this particular example, we were doing a post-processing phase including proper placement. So as mentioned, because the golf club itself has its own set of challenges that we wanted to go over, and that included, and the way to get around that was to just put in a 3D model of a club. And so as you layer those kind of bits of solution in, you get further and further away from real time. But when it comes to these events, with Sky, we were shooting the golfers on the Wednesday. It took about 7 minutes to shoot, and then they were broadcast live on the Friday.
Charles, thank you so much. That's great. Thank you so much. Right, I'd now like to introduce a couple of my very good friends, Chris and Rob. And and Matt, because he wasn't on my list. Three for the price of one. This sort of story sort of started off at one of our meetups a couple of years ago. So they're going to tell you about their story, about what they've been doing, and their fantastic Reality 01.
Well, Reality 01, the scanner's called the Clone Pro.
The Clone Pro. So.
Yes, so as it's loading up, excellent. So we will, well, there we go. So yeah, we will present you, we've got our piece of hardware outside, so we will be able to, show it to you in person after the talk. But yeah, we're just here to introduce you to this piece of hardware and the software associated with it. Okay. Who's going to take over for the initial presentation?
So we're hoping that today's not going to be too much of a sales pitch. So we're going to tell you a little bit about where we came from, and then Chris and Matt, who have a huge amount of expertise in the 3D scanning world, are going to teach you a little bit about 3D scanning. So not specifically about our scanner. You'll hopefully learn a little bit, and then if it looks like it's something that's interesting, we can talk about potential applications later on. So, founded in 2017 by me, Chris, and shortly after Matt, our vision really was how we could automate the process of taking real objects and turning them into volumetric 3D models. So a little bit like what the guys at Dimension do, but instead of focusing on moving volumetric models, we're focusing on single static models and really going for high quality detail on that. So if I kind of kick to here to where we kind of started off. So the genesis of the company was, before it was started, I had a background in web and mobile, done a lot of web development, run a few digital teams for many years. And I bought the Oculus Rift and just was completely switched on by the original DK1. I was like, right, this has got to be the future. And then actually, I ended up getting hold of a Gear VR, which was the first mobile VR headset. Some of you guys might know that Oculus and Samsung collaborated on and entered a competition that they ran called the Mobile VR Games Jam. And got through from 2,500 entries to the final 10 finalists, and there was $1 million worth of prize money up for grabs, and somehow I ended up just walking away with a T-shirt. I'm not quite sure how that happened, but we did get into the final. So that was the beginning, and that kind of led us to 2 years ago, where I was stood up at Augmenting Reality. Steve kindly invited us to talk about what we were doing way back then. And I think I probably made it sound like we were a lot further along than we actually were at that point. So this slide here talks about how we would have a scanner. We were going to have this cloud engine that reconstructed everything automatically, and then we were going to spit that out into a VR headset. And the reality was that I'd kind of built this version of the scanner in my shed at that point, and it wasn't really that much more than that. But it did work, and it showed promise, and it was what fed into that original demo that we did for the Oculus competition. So after that, we applied for something called Augmenting, which is an accelerator run by Digital Catapult and Seed Camp. That was a 12-week accelerator that really did kind of launch the company. So off the back of that, we were able to kind of create this next version of the scanner, which was still a bit kind of hodgepodge, but it did work. We then got to a position where we were able to build version 3. We only ever built 2 of these, and one of these went up to a VR lab up in Gateshead called Proto. So you can kind of see we're starting to use proper tooling here, proper kind of machining techniques, laser cut sort of parts. So we're sort of edging towards actually having something that looks like a real product. And then finally, we've got our what we're showing off today, which is the new version of the scanner, which is a bit more portable than the last one. You can see it out the back there, and this is our Clone Pro. Essentially, this is a scanner that sort of has very optimized lighting that lets you send a load of images to our cloud service that then automatically will create models, and that's what Chris and Matt are going to tell you a little bit about. So I'll hand over to them now.
Yeah, so let's talk about a little bit more precisely about the scanner. So in general, the grand vision behind it is to really make 3D scanning accessible and easy, because if you have tried photogrammetry yourself or any type of scanning, it takes a lot of manual work, and we try to get all of that out of the equation. So before I start, I just want to show like a result of what comes out of the scanner. So we went for really, really high level of detail, and to get to that point, we thought, we actually have to build an entire hardware to get exactly the quality that we wanted, and that's how the scanner and the software that goes with it was born, really. So in the grand scheme of things, in the space of 3D scanning, there's different versions and different methods that Chris will walk you through.
Thanks, Matt. So my background is actually, it's very different to Rob and Matt. So my very first job out of university was with a company called 3D Scanners. It does what it says on the tin. And this was back in 1999. And we were the first company to put a laser probe on the end of these measurement arms. So, I mean, think of where the technology space was, like it's now 20 years ago. Mobile phones were around, but they didn't have color screens. They definitely didn't have depth cameras on there. So 3D scanning technology had just kind of broken out of the research labs, and the first units were being sold into industry. And the typical price of a 3D scanner at that point in time was around about £100,000. And I was actually at a trade show earlier today in Birmingham, a thing called TCT. And all of these companies, they still exist, and they're still selling industrial spec technologies, and the price point has not come down really from where it was 20 years ago. It's continued to go up. And the reason for that is because these guys are really, really focused in very high-end applications, so things like automotive and aerospace. And the level of performance that they can achieve in terms of micron measurement is absolutely stunning. And we'll tell you a little bit about what we're not doing and how we're different to these guys today. But I think, I mean, for me, it's a really interesting history. So on the top right-hand side, you've got this thing. It's a huge granite bed, and you have these big ceramic bridges over the top of it. And these things cost way more than 100,000. And these are the reason why we have incredible products today. So these things can measure down to micron level measurement, so a fraction of the dimension of a human hair they're able to measure. These things need to live in thermally controlled environments because of if you change the variation of temperature of the room, that's gonna go beyond the accuracy that is achievable with these devices. They're absolutely spectacular. These are the reasons why we don't need to run in a car anymore. We buy a car and it works perfectly, because all of the engine components are measured with these tools. So this is really the origins of the 3D scanning world. And originally it was very slow, used a physical touch probe, and there was a brilliant UK company called Renishaw who was still top of the game, and they were the originators of this touch probe technology, and they were the reason why a lot of this market space exists today. We've got a couple of other sort of dominant designs. So a lot of the 3D scanning today that is done, which is probably the closest to what we do, is with these handheld scanning systems, the bottom right-hand side over here. So there's a couple of companies, Artec and Careerform, Shining 3D. So they're using a handheld scanning technology, and they do grab some color information as well. And it's really interesting just to see that they're trying to approach the sort of markets that we are, but in a different way, in a way that we have a really strong advantage. So let me give you a little kind of takeaway as to why we're different from just a color scanner, color handheld 3D scanning solution. So if you imagine a photo studio, you could take in your mobile phone into a studio and take a snapshot in a beautifully lit environment with a well-staged object, and without much skill at all, you could get a stunning quality shot. You could take a professional grade camera, and as a novice, you could go out into the world around you and have a snap of something, and it would not look very good. So that lighting, that context of the capture is it creates a huge amount of benefit in terms of the ability to capture things. So if you're using a handheld scanner in a kind of any old lighting environment, that just is not going to give you the same sort of quality as what we achieve. So our 3D scanner that we call it, actually it's really a mobile 3D studio. And that's what enables us to create the amazing color images and the color quality. And we also optimize the 3D data in a very different way to the way that these guys work. So these are really all about the micron measurement, whereas for us it's all about creating stunning quality visuals and having the different layers, the geometry, but also the textures and the maps that are absolutely perfectly well suited to these visual applications rather than measurement applications. So if you're really interested, I could go on about this for hours, but I'm not. So come and speak to me afterwards, and I'll hand back over to Matt to speak a bit more about our scanner.
Yeah. So yeah, in this world of different use, different scanners, where do we sit? We really worked hard to make it extremely easy to use. So we're proudly in the easy to use section. We're also fairly accurate. Of course, we can't compare ourselves to like micron precision, but in terms of visual quality, we're up there really. You'll see for yourself, but yeah, in terms of quality of material and texture, also since it's working with photogrammetry with pictures, I'll go to it more in detail. We get excellent render of the texture of the object. So what is photogrammetry in a nutshell? It's creating 3D volumes from a series of pictures. So basically it's trigonometry. So that's very popular for films and games and things like that. That needs high visual impacts in the quality of the renders. However, it's got a bit of an issue, is that if you do it the traditional way, you will spend a lot of time and expertise going through many, many steps and many potential hours to clean up the data, capture the data first, and then clean it up, and then make it suitable for the platform you want to use. So that's an example of someone cleaning up a statue. So you'll see he spends a few hours fixing everything, and then he goes to a second software to eventually get his assets. And that's what we are trying to ease the burden of doing that. So that's the final version. So yeah, so why would you use that for? What are the common use case for the technology in general of photogrammetry? So you've got massive scale. You've got a building site. You need to put a building somewhere, and you want to have a survey of the current state of the surface. Generally, that's done with drones. You take a few hundreds of pictures, and then you rebuild your environment based on that. There's very good solution for that. It's different needs. You will get shadows and other things built in. Generally, people don't mind, but we're not actually interested in taking that market. That's being catered for. And then on, generally speaking, smaller objects, you've got two different methods. You can have phone-based 3D scanning. You might have downloaded some apps so you can just film an object quickly, and that's extremely easy to use, but it's not a great quality. And you have excellent quality by doing it manually, and that's what we're interested in. It's quite often used in art and heritage, and just smaller objects in general. However, as we saw earlier, that takes a lot of manual work, and that's where we come into play. So what we do, ease of use, definitely number one thing, and good precision. We've talked about that. And to the contrary of more engineering solution, we do not do like micron precision, large scale. And also that comes with the ease of use. No endless options. So it comes out of the box. You put it on the scanner as it is, and it comes out as it is. There's not a lot of room to tweak things. So how do we achieve this quality? Well, as I said, as Chris mentioned, it's all down to the raw image. When you do photogrammetry, everything starts with a picture. If you've got a great picture, you've got a good chance of having a good reconstruction. If you have a crap pictures, you just can't reconstruct properly. So building this hardware helped us getting the best possible picture. That's what. So with that in mind, we wanted flat lighting, so that helps with getting the color of the objects and not having what we call baked-in shadow. We'll go through each one of these things on different slides. So baked-in shadow, that's what I'm talking about. So here you've got an example scanned by someone else, probably manually, and that's been scanned with our scanner. And you can see that in more intricate areas, you have shadows that are part of the objects. And that's not how an object should look. Ideally, you want as flat as possible capture of the texture. And then in your 3D software, you can add the shadow where you want it. You can spin the sun around, and you can have the shadow follow the object dynamically. But you don't want it to be included with the object. We also use polarized lighting. So once you've solved the problem of the shadows, you still have a potential issue with reflective surfaces, because you take hundreds of pictures of an object. If the object is reflective, the highlight will not move as you spin the object, and it will confuse the reconstruction engine behind it. So for that, you can just polarize your light and polarize your capture on your camera. And I have to say, it is a little bit magical when you use it. So it goes from something very reflective, like you've got here, to simply removing the reflection by just turning the lens. So we use that as well, and it gives us a very, very clean color again. There's other things, other factors that affect the quality of your image. That's more traditional photography. If you have low ISO, then you have grain. If you have grain, then same thing. The algorithm will not recognize these pixels between the pictures because there will be this grain in the way. If your picture is blurry, your object will look, imprecise, blurry. And a third one is a f-stop, so the depth of field. We want to maximize the depth of field. So on the pictures, the sharp area is as big as possible. And all that is achieved by just having a very sturdy camera, as you will see. And I think, yes. In terms of user, how the user experience the scanner, we try to make it simple, so S for simplicity. And then there's just 3 steps. So you put your object on it, you frame it just correctly, put the focus on, it's very simple, and check the filter is on. After that, you can hit play and pretty much wait for it to come back on the other side. Speaking about coming out on the other side, we notice when we're talking to potential clients and people who are interested, we're talking to people from the film industry, as well as some fashion brand, as well as some education, some people in education. And some people say, oh yeah, I want to have it in my VR headset. And some people say, oh, I want to put it on a massive IMAX screen. So we need to make sure that automatically we get an output that will suit everyone's needs. And that's why we have a whole set of different level of details. So we do get a massive digital negative, if you want, of several million polygons and very high texture resolution. And from that, we derive less and less resolution depending on what platform you want to. So yeah, that's about it for us and for the hardware. I hope it all made sense. If you have any question, let us know. And yeah, that's it. Chris, do you want to mention we hiring?
Yes. Yeah. So over the next few months, not immediately, but over the next 3 to 6 months or so, we're going to be looking to expand the team. So people who have got a good general technical background, whether that's in like the digital aspects, like software, or anybody who's got a bit of a mechanical background as well, that would be useful. So come and chat to us. As I said, we're not hiring immediately, but we want to get some good people lined up over the next 3 to 6 months as we begin to expand the team a bit further.
All right, fantastic, guys. Thank you so much.
You.
Are there any questions? Yes. Can I borrow your mic? Thanks.
Great presentation. I like the product as well.
Thank you.
What's the difference between scanning objects? The machine doesn't scan large. It scans like sort of small objects and sort of things rather than, scanning at large, just like we had with Dimension Skyscope, kind of using many different cameras to scan objects and sort of thing. I mean, was there something behind the...
So you meaning why do we focus on small objects rather than like much bigger things? So part of it really is like our business model. So the technology itself, it scales. Like your studio is much bigger than our scanning zone. You can use the same principles and fly a drone around and capture images. And I've worked in the drone survey world, and people will capture in huge sites like mining environments. So the technology scales, but for us, we want to build a product and a market out of this. So our bet for the future is that there's going to be a lot of content that people want to put into a digital form. And so live capture is computationally very expensive, right? So every model that we have, you've got to have like several frames per second to capture that motion. So we're trying to, in a way, simplify the process to make it very, very accessible for a lot of people. So we've got one camera instead of hundreds of cameras, and we're able to change the position of the camera and move the object. So that gives us a much more economic way of getting a similar kind of output of having lots of different camera positions. So for us, that was it. But there's always an object that is a centimeter too big to go on our platform, however big we design that platform. So we had to kind of pick a limit somewhere. And that's about the right kind of health and safety limit so that you can actually carry the thing, you can actually get it through a doorway. We talked about, and we actually built a kind of a custom disc to go on that's about 1 meter wide, but that disc on its own weighs like 40 kilos. So we were...
we can scan chairs for you and stuff like that, but the productized version of the scanner maxes out at about 50 centimeters is the biggest object.
So for us, but that's a big market, right? So anything that is of that kind of size, so for like product, advertisement, arts and heritage stuff, there's a lot of stuff in that space. And maybe we'll have a bigger scanner in the future, but we'll most likely have a smaller one as well that's even more economical.
Okay, any more questions? Yeah, one over there. I'll come back to you in a second.
I just want to ask about the VR application that you mentioned on your slide. Is that the idea is once you scan it and then we'll just upload it as a 3D asset into Unity or whatever engine we're going to use for VR development?
Let me give that one to Rob.
So, yeah, I mean, we've found that a lot of our early adopters are not that interested in VR and AR, but we think that our long-term users are going to be really interested in this. So, although we haven't got anything customer-facing yet, we have got proof of concept, and this is the levels of detail that Matt talked about. We've actually already built streaming technology that allows us to stream the models that you've captured on the scanner into a VR headset or an AR headset. So we actually use Unreal Engine 4 for that. We've got kind of like a plugin that we're working with one of our developers in San Francisco, who incidentally also works for Leap Motion. And so we're able to kind of do that. We can stream objects in real time to essentially what is a thin client. And because our content management system where you store your scans allows you to tag the scans, in theory you can do a dynamic search to our API and pull down the objects into that. So we do have that working in the lab. We're not finding a massive need for it with our early customers, but it's definitely where we see the future. So we are going to we're going to build a way for people to easily get stuff into VR as well.
Yeah, we've got an offline VR demo here with us as well.
One more question here.
Yeah, so I was just interested in your business model. Is it all about sort of selling the equipment, or do you offer a scanning service as well?
Yeah, both of the above. So we have a scan lab in Cambridge Heath area. We're interested in partnering with people around the country. So we've got the scanner up in Gateshead. We're looking for other partners who might be interested in having a scanner in a lab. We've designed the software part of the platform to be very well suited to kind of imagine like a drop-in center. So you would sign up for your own account and so your data is not retained on the device itself. So from a kind of a data security GDPR point of view, we will sell the devices as well. So for individual users who just want to not expose it to other people, but just do their own thing. And there is there's access to the hardware, which is a portion of our business model, and then also the cost of use as well. The computation still has some cost, and so there's a kind of a fee per use, depending on whether you've bought it for yourself or you're using a drop-in center.
Cool, thank you. Great, thanks guys. Oh, one more question.
Right. A technical question. I think it may push it hard a bit because I think the product like that is just really needed for the size that you precisely notified us, which is the right size to scan many things, which will become assets and so on. I scanned many sculptures and many objects in my early career on the 3D scanning. Obviously, the highlights and occlusion and reflection is a big drawback for that sort of area. And I believe I haven't got to the point that what could be done unless you need to apply a spray and other sort of, applications. Do you have a projection for that, a complete product like that, a superior product to actually overcome that problem?
So, I mean, part of our future, we think, there's challenges with all kinds of 3D scanning, and photogrammetry in particular, for anyone who knows, struggles with highly reflective surfaces like mirrors and glass, which, if you're scanning an artifact that happens to have that on there, you're probably going to have to do a bit of post, and we can't solve that at the moment. But we do believe, and actually we just had inbound queries from Facebook and Oculus computer vision team, who were obviously thinking the same things, that there are going to be machine learning solutions to this problem. And part of the kind of less scalable part of our business, which is what we call the kind of scan services business, we think is going to allow us to kind of create the sort of data by manually sort of touching up stuff so that we've got the before and after shots that can then feed into those sort of techniques. But that's, it's a big kind of can of worms to open, but we do think that there's going to be ways to do that. We recently just did 10 scans for one of the UK's top artists. We're not really allowed to say who he is, but he wears a dress, so maybe you might be able to figure out who he is.
Narrows it down a little bit.
Sorry?
Narrows it down a little bit.
And three of the pieces had chrome on them, so we were able to capture the geometry of the surface, but we're not able to capture that chrome. So that, as part of our scan services, is something that is always going to need post. So I think that as we generate that data, then we can kind of explore those other things.
Great, thank you guys. It's been great to see this sort of coming along. Fantastic, thanks. Right, now we've got Rachel Beach. Rachel, come on up. Now, Rachel is the project manager of ACE IT, which is the London South Bank University. It's a free accelerator program for London creative and digital SMEs working in immersive tech. So, which is perfect for here.
Yeah, so I'm probably introduce myself shortly. I'm Rachel, I manage ACE at LSPU. I was speaking to Steve about our programme, and he felt it might be interesting for you to hear about in case it's something that you want to apply to. So LSPU is an organisation, we do loads in terms of business support and innovation support, working with a lot of SMEs, and we run many projects that are funded by the European Regional Development Fund, and we run those across different industries. And we've just launched a new one, ACE IT, which is predominantly creative and digital focused. And the idea of ACE IT is to support immersive tech SMEs who are London-based. ACE IT stands for Accelerating the Creative Economy Through Immersive Technology. We're setting up the program at the minute, and we're launching at the end of October. We're having a launch event at the Ministry 24th of October in the afternoon. And yeah, it's free for the SME, and basically what you'd be getting is research and development and innovation support through accessing our academics and access to our specialist facilities on site as well. And we are working in partnership with UAL, University of the Arts London, particularly their London College of Communication branch. It's going to run in 2 cohorts. So the program, we're taking on SMEs at the minute. The project itself runs until June 2022. So we're launching for the first cohort this October, and then the second cohort in a year's time, probably September next year. Alan, do you want to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your element?
Hello, so we've just come up from Elephant and Castle, where both of those universities are. My name's Alan, and I run a division or a department at the university in the School of Arts and Creative Industries. So I'm responsible for something called Creative Technologies, which kind of covers a lot of this area. But one thing I would just add to what you're saying, I'd encourage you to come if you're interested to come on the 24th. I'll put out some cards, and you can grab one, or you can photograph one so you have contact details. Even if you're not ready, perhaps if you're thinking about a project or you're working on a startup, it might be something you'd be interested in over the 3 years of the program. So I'd encourage you to come, and then you might think about joining at some point. In terms of the school and what we can offer, just to kind of give you the big picture, because I know we're sort of past 8:30. Creative Technologies involves courses. We have games courses, we have journalism courses, we have courses in visual effects, we have courses in animation, we have courses in media production, content development, and we're developing more courses in augmented reality as well. So that's a course that's going to come online. That's my department. We have 2 other departments. One is film and media. So we have traditional film course, we have traditional film program, we have photography, and we have film studies. And we have another division or another department which is about drama. So we have live performance, theatrical technologies, we have creative advertising, and we have fashion promotion. So somewhere in there, there's a mix of disciplines that all have aspects of technology and augmented reality and virtual reality connected in them. And if you work in any of those spaces, then, you know, by all means, come and see if there's an opportunity to work with us and help develop either your technology. So, I mean, you might, just one thing I'd like to add, one last thing I'd like to add is it's not just about technology, although that's probably the most obvious, you know, sort of connection, and that's obviously why we're here. But companies may need help, not just with their technology, but in regulation, in business side of it, in the financial side of it, anything to do possibly even with ethics or anything about developing commercialization of a project. So there's a diverse set of area of interest that you might be involved in. What we have at the university, outside of just the school that we work in, Arts and Creative Industries, is 7 other schools. So in those schools we can tap into should we need to talk to somebody who perhaps has an interest in architecture or in business or law. So there's a lot of scope for lots of various projects. We don't know who's going to come to us yet. We hope some of you will come to us. But a lot of what we do and how we help companies will come from the launch and from the people who are telling us what they need, which might be different, possibly, from what we think people need. So it'll be very interesting in October. Like I say, we'll put contact details out because we came analog to talk to you guys and introduce ourselves. And I don't know if there's anything else you want to add. We can take some questions, or if you want to take questions outside, that's perfectly fine too.
Also, just to give you a bit of an idea about the sort of scope of the project, over the lifetime of the project, we aim to support 70 London-based SMEs. And from that 70, we hope that 35 of those will work through sort of intensive research collaborations with our academics. And from that, we aim to get support 20 businesses with new products and services to the firm, and then of those, 10, hopefully, products and services to get to market.
Oh, fantastic, Rachel. Any questions? Nope. Okay, right. We'll also put up the details on our Meetup site as well. Thank you so much for coming along. Sounds like a fantastic thing. And the facilities there are really amazing, so it's definitely worth looking out for. Now, talking of plugs, I'm actually on the 15th of October curating a whole strand at a thing called Giant Health event. It's all about immersive. It's about how immersive technology works in the medical sector. And we've got a whole range of people during the day. So you don't have to be totally interested in just medicine, but anything to do with the whole healthcare sector. And that's going to go from, in actual fact, sort of surgical procedures through to, in actual fact, sort of curing, helping to cure people from post-traumatic stress and things like that. So we've got a complete range of things. So if anybody would like to come to that, just drop me a line and I can get you free entry, okay? So that's going to save you about 90 quid. And for everything else that's happening over the next 3 or 4 weeks before we have our next meetup, you can download Augmenting Reality, which is a paper.ly actual thing that you can actually download, and it actually has sort of, it's not just a paper, it's actually sort of interactive, so you can actually sort of understand about everything that's going on in augmented reality. And virtual reality, AI, and AR. And anybody needs to contact me, you can contact me on Twitter or via my LinkedIn, please do. And the next meetup is going to be on the 26th of October. So I look forward to seeing you there. And because they've all been so nice, I've got a couple of retro T-shirts for Amplified Robots. So first come, first served in various sizes. So anybody who wants a free T-shirt, come up and see me now. And if not, feel free to mingle. And I will see you next month. Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.